Hello everyone, my name is Adam, and welcome into this week's trip down the Homeward Path. Before we get into things, I've got a few questions. Are you a fan of Magic the Gathering? Presumably so, since you're here listening to a podcast about it, but, what do I know? But is there something else in your life that takes precedence? Keeps you away from your magical aspirations? A job, a career, partner, spouse, children, any and all of the above. Listen, I'm right there with you. I have a wonderful wife, 3 children, full-time job, and a lot of extracurricular commitments that make it really difficult to devote the amount of time, finance, and energy that high-level competitive Magic normally takes. But in spite of that, are you, like me, relentlessly seeking improvement every time you get a chance to play? If that sounds like something you're interested in, then I suggest you hop in and buckle up. Now let's go for a ride. But it's a good time to remind you that we are brought to you by the following sponsors. PureMTGO.com is one of the largest depositories of Magic content on the web. They've got a little bit of something for absolutely everyone. And I do mean everyone. So head over there, check out their collection of stuff. While you're at it, I understand that the arena grind can feel like a bit of a slog, especially if, like me, you're traditionally at least a free-to-play player. But thanks to our sponsor at Grey Viking Games, you don't have to wander the wilderness in search of your glory on your own. You can head over there and find access to pre-release codes, single pack codes, cosmetics, promo packs, card sleeves, any and all of the above. So go and find your glory at greyvikinggames.com. And if you want to support this show in a much more direct fashion, don't forget to head over to patreon.com/HomewardPathMTG. This show is always going to be free, but if you like what we're doing enough to help us keep doing it, go over, become a patron, and take advantage of your rewards. And if you've got questions, comments, or concerns about the show, or you just want to talk, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at HomewardPathMTG. You can find me on Facebook. My name is Adam Spain, like the country. Yes, I got picked on about that for most of my life. And you can join the conversation in the Facebook group, the Homeward Pathfinders. So, head over, check all that stuff out while you continue to listen on the Homeward Path. So it's been a rough couple of weeks, but it's important to get everything together and move on. I'm sorry this episode took so long to get going, but let's dive in to Budget Spotlight. This week, Budget Spotlight for Temur Week, the last of the color series, and we're going to start off with green, which is the core color of the clan. And our green budget card of the week is Lovestruck Beast. Now, if you've played Standard for the last 2 years, you know exactly what this card is. You have played against it 1,000 times, right? Its adventure half is Heart's Desire for a green, create a 1/1 human. Spell half, or creature half, is 2 and a green, 5/5, can't attack unless you control a 1/1. So, y'all didn't really think I'd leave off the second most efficient creature I've ever gone to battle with, did you? For reference, the first most efficient creature I've ever gone to battle with is still Tarmogoyf, because 2 mana. Efficiency aside, though, this thing has a synergy with a lot of pieces thanks to that efficiency, which sounds weird to say, I know. But it gets better. You've got cards like Great Henge, where it comes down on turn 3, and you can potentially Great Henge on turn 4. You've got the synergy with Embercleave, where because it's so large, it can represent a massive chunk of their life total in one swing. Synergy with Pelt Collector, where it can get you to 5/5 on Pelt Collector. Synergy with Stubborn Denial, where it's a 1 mana negate. Synergy with fight spells, where even if you're not able to attack, something like Decisive Denial, you can just punch their thing and kill it. You can kill their Bone Crusher. You can kill their Robber the Rich. You can trade it for their Anax, or just kill their Anax, depending on what their board state looks like. So all around, Lovestruck Beast is just like the perfect high-efficiency creature for Standard. And you can do a whole lot worse than the most efficient creature in Standard, the second most efficient creature I've ever played, for 50 cents. That is 50 cents for that. 3 mana, 5/5. Minor drawback. Moving on, as with all the clans, we move from the core color to its ally. Ally color is red, and our card of the week for red is Goblin Rabblemaster. Now, I have not gotten a chance to do this one in a long time. Goblin Rabblemaster is 2 and a red. I can't remember how big. Let's pull it up. I'm actually at home today recording this one, as opposed to being on the road, so we can do that sort of thing. But Rabblemaster in particular kind of falls into that same allegory that we talked about last week of Relic Robber, where it's a value threat. And in the case of Rabblemaster, this thing's value damage adds up real quick. So, 2 and a red buys you, let's get the thing pulled up, a 2/2 creature, Goblin Warrior. Other goblins you control attack each combat if able. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 1/1 red goblin token with haste, and whenever Rabblemaster attacks, it gets +1/+0 for each other attacking goblin. So it's part like weird Legion Warboss, part Goblin Pile Driver, all awesome. In conjunction with Legion Warboss, this thing is obnoxious. This is the premier threat in the value damage 3-drop slot. This thing represents a 3-turn clock from the moment of resolution by itself, because it comes down, attacks them for 1. Makes another token on the following turn, attacks for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Makes another token the next turn, attacks for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 15, 16 damage. They're probably dead. Jumpstart finally made this thing affordable, and I will tell you just how affordable. I vividly remember looking for this thing for Pioneer when it first was announced as a format, and this card being $15, $20 a copy, and I just I can't do that. I can't do it. And it's absolutely deadly out of the sideboard of decks that are light on creatures in game 1s. And opponent doesn't think they need removal, they board a bunch out, you board into Goblin Rabblemaster, and again, 3 to 4 turn clock, depending on their life total, by itself, and your opponent boarded out removal. So, premier threat at the value damage slot, it's finally affordable, and it's absolutely deadly out of the sideboard of otherwise reactive or creature light or creature free decks. And you can do a whole lot worse than that for $5 a copy. Next on the list is our blue card, because we talked about green, we talked about red. We got to get the last one in there. And our blue card of the week is Ascendant Spirit, and this is a new one. It's from Kaldheim. It's a single blue mana for a 1/1 snow creature spirit. And snow creature matters way less than the spirit typing and the other abilities. Ability number 1 is Snow. So it's generic mana, but it has to come from a snow source, for those of you who don't know what that means. It can be any color of mana, it just has to come from a snow source. So either a snow-covered land, a snow land, or a snow creature that taps for mana normally. Ascendant, for Snow, it becomes a Spirit Warrior with base power and toughness 2/3. For Snow, if it's a warrior, put a flying counter on it, and it becomes a Spirit Warrior Angel with base power and toughness 4/4. And Snow, if it's an angel, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it, and it gains whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Now, it gets some serious... It's one of the more intriguing threats in recent memory. It evokes major comparisons to Figure of Destiny, which saw a ton of play during its time in Standard, as a 1-drop that could grow. Notable for this one compared to Figure of Destiny is the first ability makes it a 2/3. Meaning, if you resolve the first ability before your opponent gets to cast Stomp, Stomp won't kill it. In other words, if you're on the play, you jam it, they go Fireblade Charger, or you just land, pump, it's a 2/3 attack. And it's, well, I guess you probably wouldn't attack into that, but whatever. 2/3 means it blocks their Robber of the Rich, it blocks Fireblade Charger and survives, blocks and kills Fervent Champion. It's like really good against all the red deck threats. And it's a threat in and of itself. There's also the fact that it has spirit typing for older formats, which is to say, using it in conjunction with cards like Rattle Chains, Supreme Phantom, which makes it bigger. Or even if you're wild and crazy, you can use it in conjunction with cards that give it creature types. Giving it all creature types allows you to skip directly to the last ability and just keep putting counters on it. One of the knocks on Figure of Destiny was once you sunk all your mana into it and made it big, there wasn't anything else to do with it anymore. But with this, once you make it big, you can just keep making it bigger. You won't get to draw additional cards every time it hits. Like, you'll only get the, whenever this creature deals damage, draw a card once. It doesn't stack up in multiples, if I'm not mistaken. Let's double check that. Oh, it will. Never mind. Each time the last ability resolves while it's an angel, will give Ascendant two more +1/+1 counters, cause it to gain another instance of the triggered ability. Interesting. So yeah, every time it deals damage, you'll draw a card for each time that you've done that. So that's really neat. I was mistaken. And then you can tack on something like a Curious Obsession or something like a Staggering Insight if you're playing Standard. Just an all-around interesting, intriguing, flexible card that is low to the ground against control decks and can get very big very quickly against aggro. And I don't know how much more you want from your threat for $1. And last but not least, we have Genesis Ultimatum. And unless you've been living under a rock, you know what this thing does. But we're gonna talk about it anyway. Genesis Ultimatum is green, green, blue, 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 red, red for a sorcery. Again, following the trend of 7 mana, very specific to the color combination, do an absurdly powerful thing on a sorcery. It's kind of what these cards do unless you're exactly Clarion Ultimatum. But Genesis Ultimatum, you look at the top 5 cards of your library, put any number of permanents from among them onto the battlefield, and the rest into your hand. Exile Genesis Ultimatum. The saving grace for this thing is the fact that it exiles itself, which is weird to say because I would obviously love to use it more and more and more, be able to rebuy it from the graveyard or cast it from the graveyard with obnoxious other cards. But like the fact that it exiles it after resolution is what keeps this thing balanced. But y'all remember how good Collected Company is, right? Pay 3 more mana, you get 5 cards into play, or you get 5 cards, but you get all the permanents instead of 6 cards and only 2 creatures. And the best way I can describe how powerful Genesis Ultimatum is by the reaction my wife had witnessing this card resolve for the first time. I was playing the Temur ramp list with Terror of the Peaks, and I resolved Genesis Ultimatum, revealed double Terror Beanstalk Giant and 2 lands, and put everything into play, and she looked at the board and she says, "Wait, you get all of them?" That's the correct reaction to have upon resolving that card. Wait, I get all of this. Everything. I just get it. Oh. Well, that's neat. So like it's already really good in 60 card formats, and it's even more powerful in Commander, where you've got access to more broken permanents. It's just really, really good. Even if it just hits 5 lands, I'm sure your deck's doing something with them. If you copy it, it's obnoxious. If you bounce it back to your hand in response to resolution, like you copy it and then bounce it, like a Narset's Reversal or something along those lines. Narset's Reversal or what is it? Like a dual cast, and then when you cast it, you remand it back to your hand. Whatever, right? It's just so good. It's just so good. There are plenty of ways to make an already busted card even more busted when you go into older formats. So that's going to wrap up Budget Spotlight for this week. Genesis Ultimatum can be picked up for the low, low price of $2. Now, obviously, it comes with the caveat of having to get unfair things to do with it, but like even if you're just flooping a bunch of creatures into play and have one Terror of the Peaks, they probably die. Or if you have impact tremors and multiple token generators off of your Genesis Ultimatum in Commander, if you hit like impact tremors, Perforos, Avenger of Zendikar, everybody dies. Like, it's so good. So, moving on, we're going to go into our Brew of the Week, and this is one I've wanted to do for a little while. This is, I'm going to be perfectly candid and honest. I've mentioned the combo a few times. I have not talked about the deck. This is the Infinite Mutate deck. It is Temur colors. I am never, ever, ever casting Vadrock for Jeskai mana. We're always mutating. From its core concept, the basis of the deck is it's the latest attempt at the, quote, Temur parasitic mechanic plus unfair thing archetype. The parasitic mechanic being mutate, seeking to generate as many triggers as possible to gain all the value. Triggers that you want to maximize being cards like Dreamtail Heron to draw cards, Migratory Greathorn to make land drops, to get lands out of your deck, Cloud Piercer if you want to play it to give you rummage effects, the ability to discard a card and draw a card. Polywog Symbiont if that's something you want to play to draw a card then discard a card. Auspicious Starix, the ability to floop cards from the top of your deck into play. Every permanent you hit when you floop with Auspicious Starix will just hit the battlefield. You flip until you hit enough permanents to equal the number of times the creature's mutated, and then you just get all of them. That's kind of obnoxious, right? The unfair element, in spite of all the rest of those cards being as powerful as they are, the real unfair element is the combo of Vadrock and Open the Omen Pass, which can conceivably allow you to cast/mutate every creature you draw, potentially as early as turn 2 off of Gilded Goose. This is in standard, mind you. You can potentially just make a giant, massive creature that gives you all the mutate triggers, potentially floops a bunch of stuff out of your deck into play, and just like build the unbreakable board, kind of play Yu-Gi-Oh! While your opponent's playing Magic on turn 2. Have I done it yet? No. Got real close several times. It's really cool. Customization is, because of the deck's overall approach, the main customization avenue it has is determining which non-humans to play that you want to mutate onto, because mutate creatures need non-human targets. Now, the easiest, the most linear approach is to play all the mutate payoff specific cards like Essence Symbiont, cards like Polywog Symbiont, Mysterious Egg, and just dare the opponent to have enough removal to do anything about it. And just, hey, I'm a really good mutate deck, and I also have this unfair payoff at the top. We are all the way in on this plan. This is how we're going to kill you. And I played that one for a while, and it won a lot of games that didn't have any business winning. But it's not my favorite variant of the deck, and I'm going to explain why. The other approach is to play a landfall sub-theme. And count on the likes of Brushfire Elemental, Akum Hellhound, Kazandu Mammoth, and Scoot Swarm to carry a lot of weight. Now, let me explain why I like this variant better. This version of the deck allows you to win games where your mutate stuff doesn't come together properly. Where you can just turn 1 Goose, turn 2 Brushfire Land, attack for 3, turn 3 Hellhound, or turn 3 Mutate Greathorn, get a land, play a land, attack for 7, put your opponent on a clock, or mutate the Greathorn onto the Goose so that you get the land, play your extra land drop, and your Brushfire attacks for 5, your Greathorn attacks for 3. Like, you attack for 3, you attack for 8, they're at 9. Peeling a mutate creature off the top of the deck just probably gets you there. It's just ridiculous. The Kazandu Mammoths also serve as additional lands if the thing is rolling. Like, there were several games I won where I didn't do anything particularly unfair with the mutate cards. We just played some mutate cards that just so happened to speed us toward a win. But by and large, this is a deck that you want to play when you know the format is not centered around a ton of spot removal. In particular, the landfall variant. Like, the landfall variant is very good if your opponent is worried about doing their own thing. If you're seeing a lot of the adventure mid-range decks that are not going to respect something like an Akum Hellhound or a Brushfire Elemental until it's already chipped in for some damage. Kazandu Mammoth is really nice because it lives through Stomp to mutate onto. And then you have the capacity to, like, half combo where you mutate the cards in your hand even if you don't have one of the draw effects. So you can Brushfire Elemental on 2. On 3, you can open the Omen Paths, Vagerock, open the Omen Paths, Migratory Greathorn, open the Omen Paths, Dreamtail Heron, draw, and you still probably attack for a lot of damage. Even if you just draw lands. Because you will get to... Your land drop will trigger Brushfire to get +2/+2. Your mutate of Vagerock will make it a 3/3, so it'll be a 5/5. Cast Omen Paths again. Mutate Greathorn. That'll make it I'll make it a 5/6. Go get your land. That makes it a 7/8. Mutate Heron. Draw a card. That makes it a 9/10. Punch him in the face. Like, it's so... It has surprised me how effective this deck can be. And from an outlook perspective, with Standard currently defined by a host of effective spot removal, this concept is difficult to justify. But again, if we ever get back to a Standard format where players are more interested in going over the top of each other than they are interacting with their opponent, the more we see decks like Mono White, the more we see decks like the Mardu Sacrifice decks, the better this style of play is going to be. Because again, if you mutate a Greathorn over the top of your landfall creatures, or even your symbionts, it now costs too much mana to take with Claim the Firstborn. It's now got too much toughness to kill with Stomp. Same goes for Dreamtail Heron, same goes for Vagerock, same goes for any of the other mutate cards we're playing. So, it's got some legs, even if they're kind of misshapen and odd and a little bit unstable. It's It's got some legs. It's been surprising how effective the deck can be. So, moving on to our main topic, I called the episode, At Last, a Formidable Foe, and somebody's going to find that funny, I promise. So, who are the Temur Frontier? It's a clan of Tarkir, admirers of the dragon's aspect of savagery. The Temur are base green, exploring their relation to the ally color red and enemy color blue. They're a band of hardy warriors and shamans living in the harsh Arctic terrain of Tarkir. Combat is encouraged from early in life. Life revolves around family, hunting, and survival, very much like the Abzan, if we're being honest. More so than the Abzan, I would argue. Their original mechanic, Ferocious, does a fantastic job of demonstrating their reverence for strength, and gave us two of the most powerful spells I've ever wielded. Those two spells being Temur Battle Rage and Stubborn Denial. Temur Battle Rage ends games. Stubborn Denial sometimes keeps your opponent from getting back into them. Ferocious being the mechanic that you got a bonus on spells if you controlled a creature with power 4 or greater. And we've seen that adapted in more recent times without the keyword, but it's still ferocious. Neshian Hornbeetle in Standard is a ferocious creature. Let's not kid ourselves. Their new timeline mechanic, Formidable, demonstrates the power of a pack rather than the power of one creature. Rather than revering the strength of one source, Formidable wants your creatures to total power 8 or greater. And it's still home to one of the most interesting win conditions in Commander, the card being Shaman of the Forgotten Ways, I believe it is. I can't remember the name of the card exactly, but it is the legal biorhythm in Commander. The ability to sacrifice it and set each player's life total to the power of the creatures they control. That's pretty good. Outside of Tarkir, Temur tends to be home to parasitic mechanics like Energy, Mutate, Snow, Adventure, Gates, Spellslinger. Mechanics that want you to play a lot of a certain type of card. But also usually has the card quality to play traditional mid-range, tempo, ramp, or even control. Basically, there's not really anything Temur can't do. Except disrupt the hand, but that's beside the point. The line between good and oppressive with Temur tends to be razor thin and largely depends on other colors keeping them in check and the format constraints around them. So when it comes to my competitive history with Temur, the first deck I ever got to play against in what was called back then, in 2006, they called it Rug, Sea Stompy. Sea Stompy combined the aggressive early game of the Gruul aggro deck, popularized by one Mark Herberholz, and the nickname Heezy Street from back in the day. You combined the early game of the Gruul deck, cards like Curd Ape, Scab Clan Berserker, Scab Clan Mauler, Moldervine Cloak, all the things you were normally playing within the Gruul deck, with tempo elements like Remand and Plax Manta to disrupt key turns and maintain pressure. Remand was critical against cards like Wrath of God that would keep your creatures on the table. Plax Manta was better against spot removal. If an opponent tapped out for Mortify and you flashed in an additional creature and countered their spell by giving your creature Shroud, it was a good time. Trigon Predator was also an all-star, Trigon Predator being a 2/3 for 1 a blue and a green. Every time it dealt damage, you would destroy an artifact or enchantment an opponent control. It was the best way to win the ubiquitous Umezawa's Jite fights. And if I butchered that name, I'm sorry. But it was a card we saw a lot during that era. Yeah, imagine playing in a standard format where Jite was legal and there were a lot of good flying creatures, and you can pretty well imagine how important it was to have ways to win those battles. Somehow creature decks were still good. I don't understand it either. That was standard 2006. It only lasted really that summer, and then like the format sped up again with Time Spiral. Became a fundamental turn 4, and a deck like Sea Stompy was just a little bit too slow. So moving on, we have Rug Scape Shift from Extended and Modern. It was originally a traditional combo control deck, playing a combination of counterspells, removal, ramp, and card draw, until it could shift up into a lethal Valakut. This deck was sweet. The original version was just playing like 12 shock lands. You played all the mountain shock lands you could jam in there in your colors. And then beyond that, you were largely just a green-red deck. But early iterations of this deck largely just didn't play creatures, or if they did, it was something like Sakura Tribe Elder that could sacrifice to go get you lands. Or, I'm drawing a blank. I'm not going to keep trying to do that. It eventually adopted Primeval Titan and then just kind of phased blue cards out. It decided that it was way easier to just jam Primeval Titan on turn 3 and let the opponent figure it out than trying to make sure they couldn't. Instead of trying to make sure the opponent couldn't do anything about it, you just do the most powerful thing you can, and it'll probably get you there. That brings us to one of the most fun decks, one of the decks I've had the most fun playing in my time playing Magic, period. Temur Energy from 2017 Standard until, like, all the good cards got banned. The core of Attune with Aether, Rogue Refiner, Harness Lightning, and Whirler Virtuoso powered several iterations. At first, it was Temur Marvel. It was green-red Marvel at first. It adopted blue after they banned Emrakul. But then they gave us Felidar Guardian, and you could just play an infinite combo in Standard, and Felidar Guardian was the only white card you needed. So it became 4-color Copycat. Within that same era of the format, one of the best ways to counteract the Copycat deck was Dynavolt Tower. So you took the core of Attune with Aether, Harness Lightning, Rogue Refiner, Whirler Virtuoso, and you played it with Dynavolt Tower and a bunch of instants and sorceries and Torrential Gearhulk, and you played a control deck. And you were able to compete along that axis because you could threaten to annihilate the Saheeli in response to the Felidar Guardian trigger if the opponent didn't have an out. And it gave you sort of legs against the whole field. After the banning of Felidar Guardian, Marvel became the go-to unfair thing, because it turns out casting Ulamog from your deck on turn 4 was really strong. Who knew? I mean, and then around it, you still had Attune, Refiner, Harness Lightning, and Whirler Virtuoso. So if they kept your Marvel at bay and they kept you from doing any sort of obnoxious thing, you could still just stockpile energy early in the game with cards like Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot, Rogue Refiner, cheap moding your Harness Lightnings to save energy where you could, and then you could just play a Whirler, make a bunch of tokens, and beat them down. And then eventually, once they banned Aetherworks Marvel, we just had the core, and then figured out that you could play Longtusk Cub as basically a 2-mana 5/5 if it was supported by those cards. And then instead of playing unfair, obnoxious combo elements at the top of the curve, we just played Glorybringer and sometimes sideboarded into Torrential Gearhulk and beat our opponents to death. And I would like to take my own little victory lap of credit for doing that before it was cool. Handing a version of the deck off to my friend Jared, who played it at our Devastation game day and ended up winning the thing because my version of Temur Energy was bigger than everybody else's. I was playing main deck Ulvenwald Hydra, which was just so stinking massive, it did a really good job of making sure the opponents couldn't do much. And to help support it, we played additional mana creatures in cutting Longtusk Cub to the sideboard. We played Cub in the board for control decks, but we played additional mana creatures in Naga Vitalist in the main deck in order to help facilitate Ulvenwald Hydra, or just jam a turn 4 Glorybringer. We could just jam a turn 4 Glorybringer or a turn 4 Hydra down their throat and make them have it. But all of those versions of the deck were viable, and it would have continued to be viable, but they banned Attune with Aether and Rogue Refiner, and the deck just completely fell apart. The best energy cards got adopted by other decks, cards like Harness Lightning, cards like Blunt-Sleeve Siphoner and Whirler Virtuoso, but none of them were quite the, I can do a little bit of everything shell that the energy mid-range deck was. And then, more recently, Temur Reclamation from 2019 to 2020 standard. Now, this is a special one for me. It took the best parts of the Sultai mid-range deck, which were Growth Spiral, Hydroid Krasis, and Nissa Who Shakes the World. Now, granted, this was a deck before Nissa was printed, and it was one of the few Growth Spiral decks in standard at the time, which is what initially drew me to it, because Growth Spiral is really, really good. But when you take the best parts of an existing mid-range deck, and then you combine them with an unfair mana engine and a combo enabler, you're going to get something pretty oppressive. And that's what happened with this deck. You started with Spiral and Krasis and Reclamation, Nexus of Fate, Expansion Explosion. Nexus of Fate got banned. We moved on. We ended up getting, Nissa plus Krasis plus Growth Spiral was really good. It was one of the few decks that was capable of fighting the Oko piles because you didn't have a ton of creatures in your deck. And you could just kill them out of nowhere regardless of how many elks they made. But then it ended up getting Uro, and that kind of vaulted it into the stratosphere once they took care of all the other stuff that Companion, that Ikoria gave to Standard. It vaulted it into the stratosphere. It became far and away the best deck after the nerf to Companions and the banning of Fires of Invention and Agent of Treachery, to the point that it was the only thing left to play. You played Temur Reclamation, or you played 4-color Reclamation to play the card that shut off the Reclamation mirror into Fairy Time Raveler. And it was that dominant up until they banned Growth Spiral, Wilderness Reclamation, and yeah, that's just ridiculous. So it went from kind of a bajanky combo deck that could play some good Magic cards to far and away the best deck in Standard and had to have cards banned out of it. And got Wilderness Reclamation banned in every format that it's probably going to be great in other than Commander. And that brings us to today, most recent, Temur Adventure. This is another value mechanic that ultimately only got knocked down a peg due to the power of obnoxiously powerful single cards, only to emerge as another powerful deck as a value mid-range deck a few weeks later. So it started out as the Lucky Clover Adventure deck. You played Lucky Clover with Edgewall Innkeeper, Bonecrusher Giant, Brazen Borrower, Lovestruck Beast, 15-card Wish board for Fae of Wishes, and you had 3 flex slots in your deck. Cards like Escape to the Wilds were obnoxious. The combination of this, the Omnath deck, and Reclamation are the distinct reasons why Escape to the Wilds is banned. But it was a very, very powerful, like, synergistic parasitic mechanic deck where you just wanted to play as many adventure cards as you could, to the point where there for a while I was playing Flaxen Intruder in my main deck so that I could jam it on turn 1, kill their Innkeeper, and attack and kill their Clover on turn 2. Or if I got my own Clover down, it would be a 7 mana make 6 2/2s late in the game. But then came Uro, then came Omnath, and then Omnath got banned, and it would have very solidly been the best deck in Standard again had Omnath been banned and Lucky Clover didn't go with it, so they took Lucky Clover with it. The way the deck is still really, really good, even without obnoxious top-end synergies. It thrives by combining a 2-for-1 emphasis from its core mechanic, then expanding to add some kind of an unfair element. Like, you can win fair games with Temur Adventures, just like you can win fair games with Temur Energy mid-range. But you've also got the pending threat of something obnoxious coming down and ruining your day. You've got Lucky Clover up until it was banned. You had Omnath up until it was banned. You have Genesis Ultimatum now threatening to flip a Terror of the Peaks and a Beanstalk Giant onto the board and just shoot you for 10 out of nowhere. You've got Luca coming out more recently and being able to build your deck in such a way that you can play the adventure cards and a card like Llanowar Visionary, which I never thought I would be willing and happy to play. But I am. And you combine those cards with Luca, who will then turn any of your 3-mana creatures into Coma, which is going to annihilate just about everybody, or just keep plussing to draw you creatures, because you draw the creatures, and as long as those cards are in exile and you control a Luca Planeswalker, you can cast them either half. It's kind of good. Like, and then plus your way up to an alt where all your Lovestruck beasts deal 5 damage to their face. You know, you've got double Lovestruck, Bone Crusher, 2 1/1s left over. That's 16 damage. They're probably dead. And the adventure mechanic, the adventure deck as it stands right now, is a testament to the power level of Eldraine, as well as just the overwhelming popularity of value decks among the player populace. Like, we really like getting more than we should out of our cards, don't we? We really, really do. So, at the end of the day, that's really kind of the best way I can describe Temur in a nutshell. It seems unassuming. It doesn't look obnoxious until you realize there's just not much better to do. And once you do that, things kind of flip on their head and you realize that you should have been playing that the whole time. And it's a testament to just the overwhelming power level of combining Simic, which, as we've established on several occasions, every base Simic color pair is kind of obnoxious. Bant is kind of obnoxious. Sultai can be kind of obnoxious. Simic itself is rather obnoxious. And then Temur, we've gone through 1, 2, 3 archetypes and like 15 decks, 15 different iterations of decks that all saw ban list updates because of their ubiquity. And if that's not a testament to the overwhelming power level of Temur, I don't know what is. So, I guess I would say looking forward, if you're not sure what you want to play, see if there's a Temur deck that's good, because it's probably good enough. And with that, that's all I've got for this week, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the show. We will be back either more than likely next week, Maybe with a guest. I don't know yet. I got to talk to him. Got to see if we can make it happen. But we'll be back next week. And we're finally done with the color series, so we can get back to talking about something that basically nobody cares about anymore, but I want to talk about it anyway, and that is the state of Standard as it stands right now. Because I have not done an episode along those lines in a very long time, and I want to get back to doing sort of a current event series. So the next few episodes are going to be kind of checking in on the formats that I play and what's going on with them. So, and I've got a few this week. But if you've got questions, comments, concerns, you can send them to me on Twitter, at HomewardPathMTG. You can send them to me on Facebook. My name is Adam Spain. You can join the conversation in the Facebook group, the Homeward Pathfinders. If you're a patron, you get access to the Patron Pathfinders Discord for $1 a month. You get your deck pushed up to the front of the Brew of the Week line in $3 a month. And you get your very own episode topic. You help me write the episode you want to hear at $5 a month. So, without further ado, I have to give credit where it's due before I do these. These came from Chef MTG on TikTok. And they are just, mwah, chef's kiss. The first one said, hey, why don't bat mages like black or red mana? It's because they're Rakdos intolerant. And then the other one said, hey, I knew this guy that was a soldier, was a great warrior. And then one day he just decided he had enough and invested into farming equipment and started living a more peaceful life. So I guess you could say he went from swords to plowshares. Oh, I love it. I'm so glad to have found another person that enjoys this type of humor the same way I do. If you want to see more MTG dad joke content, I will eventually be doing some of them on TikTok myself at Homeward Path Gaming. Right now, the main focus on Homeward Path Gaming is just kind of letting the listeners of the podcast get to know who I am away from Magic, but we're still going to have plenty of Magic-related humor on the way. But that's all I've got for this week, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the show. We'll catch you next week. So, with that in mind, be safe, be kind, and keep relentlessly improving. We'll catch you next week.